You have never made a CV.
Yeah, never once. I did 200 episodes of a podcast while I was still at university, just asking everybody and anybody that I thought was inspiring. People don't know how they want to be helped.
What belief about Gen Z hiring is completely broken today?
A cohort of people that did everything they were told, get into the right university, get a good grade, and now they're combating, the reality of grad schemes not being deemed important anymore. The recruitment industry has been so lazy for so long. That was always going to get undone at some point. It's just right now it's happening quicker than we know what to do with it.
Would you say that most companies just are like outdated when it comes to hiring Gen Z?
According to Deloitte research, 75% of hiring managers say that Gen Z is the hardest generation to work with. On the flip side, Gen Z says that companies just lack purpose. So who is wrong? Today, we're talking to Peter Wood, who has successfully built and sold a company, The Graduate Guide, that connects emerging talent with startups and scale-ups. So let's go. Peter, welcome to Building Great Tech. Amazing to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, Peter, you have built and sold successfully your first startup that helps grads, Gen Z, get their first job. What belief about Gen Z hiring is completely broken today?
That AI is going to be the way it's solved. I believe in a much more human, in-person approach. I think AI is great for a lot of things in terms of proficiency and actually like the upskilling side of things that we're trying to work on with young people. But in terms of actually showcasing the skills, the CV is completely outdated, and the way that people are assessed and also given opportunities to speak to and learn from employers is not something that can be done online. In my opinion, like the feedback loop needs to be really short and closed. And so we've basically gone all in on a human approach to challenging this.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. So what would you say is the sort of top benefit of, hiring Gen Z that companies don't really realize?
I think it's the malleability of our generation. We live in an age where being curious is rewarded a lot. But I think at the moment, the amount of exposure is giving us a lot of paralysis and actually moving forwards with anything. And I speak on behalf of a cohort of people that did everything they were told, get into the right university, get a good grade, and now they're combating, the reality of grad schemes not being deemed important anymore, or companies doing less and less of it. And I think now we're looking at a new way of how people can enter the job market, and if done correctly, I think what's really exciting is that this generation can take all their sort of digital and technology proficiencies and apply it to not just be the cog in the machine, but actually be able to create value and do more at an earlier age.
That's really great. I love that.
I know some really extremely hardworking Gen Z, and but why is it that you think that there's that opinion that Gen Z might just be too lazy to work?
Again, I think it's a showcasing of skill sets and aptitude that is all kind of wrong at the minute. I think there's no doubt, I'm a history student, and I believe, if you look through history, there's always been people winners and losers. There's always been people that have less agency to act. But I think the way that people are able to contribute at the moment is not clear at all, and it's not whether that's the education system, all the way to universities to employers. People aren't being transparent, or at least that transparency isn't algorithmically making its way to our generation, so that they can actually, showcase that they're not lazy. And I think, the other interesting side of this is that I think and speak and write a lot about the concept of ambition. And I do that because I think it's a really underrated and misunderstood thing in people, like role that it plays in people's lives. Like for example, even myself, you said some of the things that I've achieved at the age of 24, and at different parts of my life, I think people could have typecast me as lazy because I was almost intimidated by my ambitions and therefore pursued escapist activities and did everything but work hard or do anything that moved it forwards because I didn't have my personal life ducks in order. And I think more onus needs to be put on that side of it before they can actually even exude that infectious sort of energy that employers are looking for, where people can start, you know, delivering and adding value to a business or their own careers from a very early age.
Fascinating. I love that. So, like, would you say that most companies just are like outdated when it comes to hiring Gen Z?
I think obviously it's outdated, but my journey with the graduate guide started very much on the candidate side and building a community around my own frustrations of entering the world of work. And that's, where I saw startups and scale up as this very shiny object, but really had to do my own digging and rabbit holing into what it was like. There's so much to learn, there's so much jargon. And I think, listen, like employers have it equally as hard. Nothing's easy for them right now. And they're, whether that's the hiring teams or the founders or the CEOs, that it's not that they're not thinking about it, and they're probably having loads of board meetings, but even they're not exposed to solutions. And so, just really, I I think that employers right now, like there was a part where I think, okay, well, maybe we have really great employer brands because we're getting so many applications, and maybe we're a really desirable company to work it for. But actually, like now it's surfacing as they're getting a lot of applications from desperation and like a lack of clarity of why people are even applying or what they're applying for. So I think in terms of the outdatedness, it's a bit more nuanced than just saying, they're completely out of tune with the reality, but rather they just don't know how to act with any speed or clarity on a solution.
Love that. So you basically said kind of get yourself together firstly, and then also have some empathy for the companies that are hiring themselves in kind of understanding you as a
Yeah, I mean,
cohort.
this is extremely topical conversation, and like I think finally now, whether that's the media and the press or whether that's like just generally the sentiment societally, like we are starting to put a lot of stress on how important a problem this is to tackle. And even today, like, gathering with a lot of the top voices and careers in LinkedIn, bringing people in person to share ideas and experiences, it's really impressive and amazing to see the sheer talent density that's coming in to solve a problem that, if we're honest, like the recruitment industry has been so lazy for so long. Like it's been like, place whoever's useful to you immediately in the pursuit of money. And I think like that was always going to get undone at some point. It's just right now it's happening quicker than we know what to do with.
So would you say, how does the Gen Z search and apply for jobs? Is it like different, if they would like to do it differently? There's a lot of platforms that use AI now instead of humans. So you talk to AI, like talk to us a little bit, like how different it is.
Yeah, listen, like I've had to find my own way in building a business in this space to like work out where I can provide influence. And I think in the beginning, I tried to be everything to everybody, and actually, like as the more I've sort of got into it and stayed in the game, it's about like helping who you can help in the beginning, and like career search is not going to be a tick box programmatic structure anymore. Like it once was, where you could almost like, I don't want to say walk into a job, but you knew what you had to do to get into a job. And it was that milk round that was big employers putting their logos and branding all over your university, and that's where you went. And now there's so much out there in terms of career discovery that I think the way that you find it, like it's gonna be more match made to like as time goes on, to how you as a person like to explore, whether that's online or whether that's in person. Like the way that you go through conversations, the way that you empower yourself to be given responsibility, where you seek problems in businesses that can be delegated. Like, I think the worst thing you can do right now is just scroll on job boards, because not only is that soul destroying experience, but it's just not, you know, human beings aren't, you know, we're not designed for that. And so, like, I would say that's probably the things that our generation are wrestling with the most. Is just like, okay, you know, how do I actually spend my time and feel like good about myself in the process when searching for a job?
That's so interesting. Like we've had a couple of really fascinating conversations with, you know, founders in this sort of generation, and it sounds like people are just a bit more in tune with what like they want and how things could be improved and how they're kind of not aligned with like the reality of life. And yeah, you sort of
definitely cover that.
Yeah,
It makes sense. And do you think, like, speaking of reality, do you think that also because Gen Z are so like exposed to social media and kind of grew up with social media more so, and seeing the, you know, success stories on TikTok or Snapchat, do you think that could have inflated slightly their expectations of the career and success?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no doubt that's the case. And the thing about social media and the algorithmic nature of it is that, you know, it's echo chambers, and it tells you what you want to hear a lot, and it validates your thought, or it, like, you know, it pushes towards polarization and extremities, and I think like that's never going to end well. And again, like, to speak through history, like we've seen this time and time again. Like, information is power, and it's been weaponized by people for long periods of time, be that the TV and the radio, propaganda, you know, starting uprisings. But now it's like, you know, these big software companies with loads of power dictating how information is spread around. And yeah, so I think there's a real sense of apathy that is becoming more and more vocalized online about how we choose to tackle this. And I think it's going to happen. This kind of for good revolution is going to be led by our generation, and it's going to be those bold people, you know, that hopefully I can be part of, that, yeah, try and steer us away from, you know, these inflated expectations, and actually just like help people use the internet for good, because it is a really for good thing for society. I believe there's so many teething problems with it at the moment. So in the meantime, just protect yourself, base yourself, you know, in your localized communities, however you choose to create them, and yeah, focus on, you know, like more innate human things like serendipity and you know, in-depth conversations, and like finding your people, and I think that's what will serve us well.
Hey guys, we're really hoping that you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you really want to know more about who we are and what we do, go to buildinggreattech.com. Now let's go back to the episode. I'm actually quite excited about the changes that could be brought to the market and to like how companies treat their employees as well. I think it's great to see those changes are coming, and I think it's in general for the good of the future.
The generation, you're like really pushing for it.
For like to become more like human, and sort of personable, and you know, because I also read that I think Deloitte were saying that in the next 2 years, 40% of Gen Z is going to leave their current job. So it kind of feels like this, you know, being in one place for 20 years or 30 years is just not going to be the case going forward, which is why a lot of employers said that, oh, you know, Gen Z are not very loyal. But I think, in fact, as a company, you need to start thinking, how do I keep, you know, the best talent?
Well, I've been having this conversation on both sides of the spectrum of people that are like experiencing, you know, lots of, well, yeah, again, apathy to their job, and just fundamentally aren't happy, or like, you know, aren't respected or whatever, right up to the other side of the spectrum where you've got these extremely talented high agency people that are going into like, you know, X prestigious company, and, you know, have like these crazy offers of hundreds of thousands of pounds from these scaling businesses that know that to win their race they need to have that, extreme talent. And I think like there's a real lag there in terms of what our generation want. Like, and a lot of the sentiment is like, we want experiences. We wanted to be able to, we want to be able to tell stories of what we achieved and what we did. Like, almost, quite cinematically, and a lot of companies don't, that it doesn't come into their periphery, and they're really like still resting on their laurels that come with their brand equity. So yeah, I think it's super fascinating.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it feels like, because we've had conversations on like on the company side, a conversation on the Gen Z side, and it feels like in the past the company that is hiring you, they'll be like, "What do you add for us? Right? What value do you add to our company?" It feels like the script is now flipped. It's more like Gen Z are asking, "What are you as a company going to add to my life?" Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I guess when you made the point initially, there is a lot of like the older generation that are going like, whether that's the lazy sentiment or the entitlement, and both those characteristics are then they will never be like deemed like valid or something that employers want. And so like you kind of have to go like, okay, well, if people are like that, then they're not helping themselves. But like, let's not focus on the people that are pretentious or self-righteous or whatever, because they've always existed. But more focused on the fact that there are loads of people who are willing to work hard, willing to like, act with agency and express all the different things that employers do want in this generation, that just don't have a way of combating this screening process right now. And again, I go back to why I think this should be an in-person should be tackled, IRL rather than remote. It's like, to even know where the skills gap are, like you first have to understand like what skills do they even have right now, and a lot aren't taking the time to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say are the top 3 things a hiring company should like look to do if they're looking to hire?
I think they need to. They, I guess there's more micro and macro answers to this. Like on a much broader scale, they need to really think about what, as a company, they want to be going forwards, what they want to achieve. I think there is a lot of this like entrepreneurship as well, and companies that are being born out of like, right, here's the idea, let's solve it, like let's do it, let's chase product and growth at all costs. And actually, like, again, I think I'm rooting a lot of this in the history, but I actually think that like the over VCification or the over investment backed, like, sensationalized like way of pursuing business building right now is problematic for employability. The greatest employability times we ever had were largely grounded on SMEs, and companies that, solve problems based on long periods of discovery, and and really like thought about who they needed in order to solve these problems. So I would always urge founders to take a step back and be vulnerable about what they do and don't have as a founding team, and then think more meticulously about what generalists you want, what culture you want to have, and only then, once you have those macros in place, you can focus on the the micro stuff of like, well, what tech are you using, like what user experience are you giving to candidates, so that that person doesn't get through this time round, maybe when they develop their career they'll want to come back. Like I think right now a lot of companies are shooting themselves in their foot with the way that they treat candidates, and some of it again isn't their fault. Like they're just doing what they were told by somebody who worked for them. But it just takes some level of introspection, that like knowing that companies live and die by talent, and that like as much as recruitment is like a almost taboo word, it is the reason why businesses do well or don't. So be more vulnerable about it.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
there's
good.
a lot in that answer.
There's a lot,
Great.
a lot to unpack there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was always interested, because obviously a lot of companies complain about Gen Z, and I wonder, like, is there like what would make a Gen Z walk out of the job interview?
Truthfully, I don't know. Like I can't speak from personal experience because I'm very unique and quite weird in that I've never actually made a CV and been through a traditional job application
You
process.
have never made a CV.
Yeah, never once. I think I started making one to like maybe apply to Spring Week's summer internships, and I was like, no, this isn't this isn't me. I'm not even going to be able to like compete with the people around me in this library alone on these jobs. So let me just go all in on what I can do now and what I think like innately I'm good at, which is like caring, giving a shit, and having confidence in myself and the curiosity that I have. And I think that's what, from the podcast to the founders I met, it was always a very like human understanding of like what they were trying to build, where I could add value, where I can't, and bit by bit, building my skill set there.
Wait, so what did you
So
do instead of the CV? You sort of
I did 200 episodes of a podcast while I was still at university, just asking everybody and anybody that I thought was inspiring to get in a room with me, where maybe previously they wouldn't have gone for coffee with me, and I would focus on trying not to make it overly Q&A and instead going, okay, how can I actively listen to them and in turn ask the questions I actually want the answers to someone I sufficiently respect at a moment that I needed to hear it the most, because then it's actually applied how the other person can help you. I think there's a lot of people that again, I don't know, like maybe this does veer into laziness, but it's like people don't know how they want to be helped. And so again, like, as much as the companies have to be introspective, I think I really was like super critical about why would I even be employed right now? Like, and this is saying as someone who went to UCL, got into a very good university, was doing perfectly well in my degree, but I was like, damn, like when it came to, my third year, had this real back against the wall feeling, which is super powerful, motivating force of I'm not employable right now. Like I don't, or at least I don't know why. So that's kind of what I did.
love that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Great story. Yeah.
And also, I just wanted to pick up on the point that you said about the VC funding, and it's like go go go. We'll build the product, like make something at all costs. So under that kind of structure of a business, you're not even considering like the value of the people that you're hiring and what they could add. Whereas you kind of compared that with SMEs, and they've been building businesses over a much longer term and solving problems. And so there's a bit more of a solid entity there for hiring, and you going in and being a part of that in an environment in which you can kind of learn and pick up and grow with the other people that have sort of gone on that journey, if I understood that correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's VCs, they get built very compartmentalized. So and this is part of like the way in which you receive funding, is that you get these super technical products and growth test founders, and they go, okay, well, we need to build a product. So, okay, we raise pre-seed investment. Let's build a tech team. Okay, we need to sell that. Let's build a sales team. Oh my god, like none of this is working. Like, okay, now we think about operations. Now we think about bringing in those generalists. Oh, the sales, we've done all the outbound we can do. Now we need to bring it inbound and educate people on why it is. Oh, let's bring in a marketing team. And then everybody's just very siloed. And then finally they go, right, okay, I think we're going to need support on this because I'm completely out of my depth. From a founder that never did recruitment, and why would they have? A lot, it's there's not many careers in which you could learn those skills unless you were in that world. And then they, it's mainly around like the Series A, Series B mark, depending on which, what kind of employer it is, what kind of CEO or leadership team there is at the time, that they'll bring in someone that can be like have a more like bird's eye view of the business and really like consult and operate on the people functions of the business. So that like I could go into more about it, like building a business at VC, have actually working as a venture scout for a VC. I do know that world well, but like I look at my business personally, I'm in a really unique position where we're part of a group where we're private equity backed. There's loads of experience, loads of young people. It's really thought about how it's being built. It's not going to crash and burn. It's got it's very healthy, and I think like VC would crash and burn our business. Like it wouldn't work for us. And I think me being part of that VC world and taking my time before even proclaiming myself as a founder with the graduate guide, like really, is paying dividends now. Because yeah, like I understand that this problem is it's an actual problem, right? And so it's going to take loads of trial and error. It's going to take loads of things not working, going wrong, and living different lives until there's product market fit, right, or whatever you want to call it. And so I also just think aside from this, like this is quite a new part to my career, but like building my own team and finding the right people and collecting those people, it's like the best part. It's the most euphoric feeling, and I just it pains me that more founders don't enjoy that side of it more, and just like naturally take more time to think about that team building side of things, that culture setting. Because at the end of the day, like maybe I'm more on the chilled out side of like that very type A founder, but I I'm very aware that I why would I be doing any of this if I wasn't happy in doing it, if I wasn't excited to wake up and go and work with these brilliant brains that are far better than me.
That makes total sense. And sorry, you said you've got PE backing over talk to us a bit about why you made that decision sort of over VC.
So basically, like it's private equity backing that's like been filtered down to me through group and expertise. So every single thing we do, or at least when we started this new venture, it was like, okay, like you should have to be able to justify why you're spending X amount of money on Y. And there's a certain quota for things that you just pull the trigger and they trust us to go with. And that's great because you need to move with speed on some things and not have to like consult in entrepreneurship. But a lot of things like, and VC isn't really like, known for this, is that there's a lot of money just being chucked at things at all costs. And because they're so fearful of like not winning that market share or whatever the reason they're doing it is, they'll invest huge amounts of talent, like crazy amounts, or into hiring or scaling this team without the validation that time and mistakes bring. And yeah, so I mean that's why you see this crash and burn nature. And I guess the other side of that is VCs are, they operate on we win if only a couple of them win out of loads of investments. So, I think it was my knowledge of that is like, would I be able to compete alongside an AI company in terms of, making the same revenue or making that VC the same money back? Probably not. So that was kind of a lot of what went into my train of thought.
Yeah. So and then the P sort of environment is different in the way it's about getting a return on all of the companies they invested under the fund rather than just hoping for one win against everyone else. If I understood that correctly, I could be wrong.
I can only speak to my experience, but I feel like private equity, at least when I look over it, I mean, listen, like I should preface that, like I'm not the individual who's raised money from private equity. That someone far more experienced with loads more business acumen and way more to their name has received this investment. And that private equity world is still very much for older, more mature business people. But in who they decide to back with that investment and funding, be that talent or the companies that they've acquired to bring in, the result is that it almost feels more like stipended, more like that accelerator model of like, giving that time to you for you to still make those learnings that you get from Bootstrap, where you're operating on with no money almost, and on some ends, and like, but then all the financial support and security that you might need to actually pursue entrepreneurship. And I think it's a new model for young founders to look out for, like, and trust me, like you're going to meet loads of people who will not give you the time of day and belittle you or whatever, or think like, that's delusional dream. But when you meet somebody that actually interrogates you and like says, pulls apart what you're doing, that's a sign that they probably really care about giving you that support and they understand what you're trying to build. And that was my experience with the acquisition and raising of this investment is, when I got that validation from angel investors putting in checks versus like them actually coming in and tearing apart. I actually don't even like truthfully know what those angel investors were investing in before, because the scrutiny was, you know, it was kind of like a, and this is angel investment. I believe that founder will work it out. Maybe I would have, maybe I won't have, but like what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to do was so much bigger than money could have provided me to do so. I needed experience and expertise and support. And I think there's that in abundance within the PE world and the people that PE back.
Yeah,
And
very smart.
do you mind sharing like which PE you guys are invested, like backed by?
So it's the British Growth Fund. They have thousands of investments and really diverse portfolio. And I guess like, you know, what's again, the business that I'm part of, the group, like we are, you know, we are operating in let's face it, a recruitment market where not lots of hiring is happening. And so I think the fact that we're a training and developer, we're Ofsted outstanding training provider. There's very very few of them in the country that we do apprenticeships. We've got hundreds and hundreds of trainers across AI, data, marketing, sales. We've built these amazing verticals to be able to like really have a more consultative approach to talent. Be that bringing in new people or upskilling existing talent. I think that's the nuance of like, not every company is meant to get private equity backing. Like you need to have alternative revenue streams. You need to be able to portray a healthy growth, and yeah, like I'm just happy to be part of it, to be fair.
That is really interesting what you just said, because did I get it correctly that you guys have actually people who train your sort of candidates? Is that right? Yeah. So it's kind of like very different from where the recruitment market is going recently, which is like replace everyone with AI, have a conversation with AI, like the AI is screening candidates and then finds the right jobs to apply for. So you went completely different direction and more like human rather than AI. Do you think this is the kind of future really in this age of AI?
I hope so. Like I'll do my best to try and make it that. But like I said, I'm trying to be self-aware enough to go like, I think there are companies that will be very successful and build and scale using, X really. There's amazing AI companies with talent and recruitment and incredible talent density that's going into that space. But it's not the game that I want to play. It's not the value add I want to have. And I'll be there for the employers that are ready for me and the employers that I can educate with my voice and the brand that we're building online.
Awesome. And actually, speaking of AI, how do you think the whole sort of Gen Z generation will be impacted by AI? There's a lot of talking about how AI is going to replace those sort of entry jobs level. How does it look on your side?
Well, yeah, we've been speaking about that a lot today in the LinkedIn HQ, and it's been really interesting hearing other people's thoughts and perspectives on this, because I think like the overarching theme is that people are learning outputs before inputs with AI. And I think as an early talent, someone at the beginning of their career, they really, really, whether they've been told it or not, they need to focus on why, how to speak to it, how to use it, and ultimately like, how to stand out against it. And I think, there's loads that you could get into within that, but yeah, like everybody's going to use it differently, whether that's within operations or marketing or software engineering. And I'm actually really not someone who's very AI proficient for somebody that actually, is part of a company that delivers AI training, because my job is like, and one of the best things about being part of this group, I am the person who makes people believe in things that don't yet exist. I'm the marketing guy, the sales, the brand, branding, and that's an inherently human thing that I don't think AI will displace. So, I think, for me, it was like build the skills that combat against AI. But for other people, it might be like, learn how to bring it into your acumen. And I think, everybody should start building their career with it in mind, whether that's in defense of it or in support of it.
Yeah, because we have good friends in tech space, like in development space, and one of my friends who is like very senior developer in the financial sector, he literally said, our company is not hiring any entry jobs anymore for developers because all of the development work is done by AI. Like, how do you, if you are now at the university and you're sort of in computer science, like, how do you even approach that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like I think I'm as much as I have a lot to say, I'm equally comfortable to say what I have I have no exposure to that world, really, and it probably is a very soul destroying thing to navigate because, but I caveat by saying that exceptional people always find their way around it. So like, and a lot of those people have to be exceptional to even pursue that career path in the beginning. So I guess they're just going to have to use a little bit of creativity of how they either get into a company and still be able to like provide value with the learnings they'd made at university, or if they just go and like leverage it to build their own business. I mean, that is a more viable thing to do now than ever.
That is very true. Like everybody can build a business the easiest like ever. And also like it's almost like when it was 2008, it was like a huge crash on the market and you were just leaving university. It was kind of the same. It's like up to you what you're going to do to make yourself needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's social Darwinism really, and I think like it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It just needs to be like I think when you think about like equality, for example, you know, getting a quality of outcome for everyone is like, it's an age old thing where it's nigh on impossible. And maybe in a meritocratic society, that should be the way it is. But one thing you absolutely can do things and act on is equality of access to information, equality of exposure, equality of education. And if you give everybody the same ability to achieve things, then it will just be what people do with it. And humans have a great knack of making things work in awful climates.
Yes, harsh truth. So you built your business obviously in like your 20s, very successful business, and I just wonder, like, in that all of that success, what do you think was kind of the darkest period for you, and how did you overcome it?
I think probably either the bit before raising investment when you're not quite ready to go out into the world, and you're not quite sure if anything's stuck, and maybe you're not bringing in like enough revenue to appear like sexy enough on a pitch deck, like when you're just trying to scramble things together and you're not actually really just building and living vicariously through that, like the feeling of making stuff happen, which is what I was doing before. I think raising investment is very much like a plaster that you have to peel off, where you get exposed to scrutiny and yes and no's and whatever. And it's a very up and down, turbulent experience. But, by the end of it, like my sort of rather like positive spin on it is that I was essentially getting free consulting from industry experts on how to build my business. And whether I came out the back of it with investment or not, like, I mean, there's no way you can learn anything more in the world. Like, I don't think there's ever an experience that could simulate the learnings that you'll make both as a human and in your personal life and whatever, or in your career and your ability to build a business. So probably that would be my answer. But generally, like throughout the whole time, it's just been periods of belittlement, crazy dark arts to try and not, from the incumbents to try and not make you participate in solving this problem. And you're kind of like, all right, mate, like, okay, so you're saying, let's talk about the skills gap and graduate career crisis. You're saying you've just got this then. It's all taken care of. There's no problem in the world. Like, there's nobody else needs to enter. Like, let me keep my market share. Well, I know that's not the case. So, to have the confidence to back yourself against that belittlement that was quite difficult at times to keep motivating yourself to do it time and time again.
Wait, so how was that happening? Can you drill into that a little bit? So you were sort of reaching out to.
Sometimes it was just out I can't speak on behalf of these people, but like, they would personally message me, and or like, just small things like, nice, nice competitor, mate, like, best of luck, or and it could be something as small as that, or it could be like very much like, speaking to people that about, on your business, and trying to like make them be like, oh yeah, like, I mean, they're not ready to, what are they really going to do? They're just doing what we're doing. And I think the best feeling in entrepreneurship is when you keep rabbit holing, you stay in the game long enough to realize a bit where they got lazy. And listen, they've, by the fact that they've built a successful business, that like, it's not that they're not solving a problem, otherwise they wouldn't be getting paid for it. But like, to say that there are no problems within that and things that they missed along the way would just be so naive. And ultimately that's what entrepreneurship is built off: people finding problems in weird niches of the world, and industries, and building a career in business and employability off the back of it.
Yeah, good for you. And like, so were those people seen, like, the senior people in those businesses, or just people like hired by them?
No, senior, yeah.
Senior. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do it through a podcast as well, Peter?
How do you mean? Sorry.
So, like, when you were running your podcast, I remember I was reading somewhere from, was it like a basement of a pub?
Yeah.
Right. So, did you use podcasts as a sort of way of talking about, obviously, problem of getting the first jobs, but was it also opportunity to get the kind of people in the industry to come and talk to you and get the connections?
Yeah, exactly. Like, getting people believing in me and what I was building. There was no better way to do it. And I think for myself, when I started it, I really didn't want to be known as a podcaster, or to be famous, or an influencer, or that's never really been my aspiration. But I just knew like, I love speaking to people. I'm inherently curious person, and like, I just knew I would enjoy it, to the point that I put my studies on the back burner, and like, I just like was doing sometimes 5 interviews a day at some point, just like, really like, knowing that not everybody's going to be as bought in, but there's always a way to find shared values and shared perspective, even with somebody that you're completely unrelated to. And I think that's just like I still use the learnings from the podcast day in, day out, and have already in action to now making a documentary, which is sort of my next rendition of a podcast. But in my opinion, like, for at least for me personally, a more aspirational format in which to like, portray the learnings, and more like stylistic to, before I had any career consciousness, all I've ever wanted to do is put on festivals and make documentaries, and bit by bit I'm trying to make that dream work. And entrepreneurship is not a stopgap, but it's a means in which I can bring both those things to life.
I love that. What self-belief, like, where do you think that comes from?
Probably knowing how it felt when you didn't have it. Like, I think, for somebody that, from the outside looking in, has lived, a very privileged life, with very supporting parents, and going through a good schooling system, I found myself at a very early age combating like a real sense of like lack of self-belief, and losing myself completely to the rigmarole of like, teenage boys, and bullying features out of you that aren't cool at that time. And I think like, seeing what happened to me, and how everything, like my grades and my life, kind of fell apart around me when I took out the curiosity and the caring about things. When I lost that, and then I've regained it, I've just been relentlessly chasing a feeling of like being true to myself, and believing that I'm not going to be for everybody, but I have good intentions. Like, I care about people, and I think like, if I can use those skill sets and those personality traits for good, like I now get to be validated on a daily basis, and belief is much easier to maintain. But in those early stages, it was completely internal, and I think that's a good bedrock.
That's amazing. Wait, and so what happened there? Like, sounds like at some point there was like a little, like a switch flipped. Because you
Yeah.
sound like you maybe had a bit of a rough time at school at some point. Was it what
Yeah.
actually happened in there?
Yeah, listen, I think it wasn't a very dramatic thing that you could write a book about. Nothing awful happened, but like internally, like it was it was things like going to places that you've always loved as a kid and feeling nothing, like feeling completely numb, feeling like being told that you are things that you completely cannot like believe that they're writing about you or what you once were. Hearing things like what happened to the old version of you, like those kind of moments, they just compound it. And like again, I reference this back against the wall feeling, and there being no, of power or momentum builder like it. Like I've learned to thrive with that feeling and to really relish it. And now I think I'm fortunate enough, to on a daily basis like pursue euphoria as a feeling. Spending time with people I love, like doing things that I absolutely love, and I think like again like that driving force, the bedrock is still there, but it's the next stage and the way I want to live the rest of my life. Knowing that bad things can happen at any point is just like when things are all stable and in your control and going well and in motion, just really just like there's so much beauty to life and humans making things happen and amazing things and I just am inspired by it and just want to be part of the conversation.
Amazing. I love that. What an example. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. What would you say is kind of like one thing that you believed about running your own business that maybe like before and now you're kind of doing it, you don't believe anymore?
Hey, I don't like. I suppose like it's that you you need a level of expertise to start it. I don't like. I mean, I can't speak to what any of my expertise were beforehand. Like, because like I said, I wasn't sure. Like, other than being able to achieve decent grades in history and like get into good university. Like, there was nothing to my name, or at least that I could put on a CV that would have, given me at all the right to solve this problem. But nobody's going to give you that right to do it, and and so you have to afford yourself that right. And I think now that I'm doing it, like you're just experiencing that every single day. Like, what right do you have to do that? What right do you have to say that? What right do you have an opinion on that? And just going like, I don't know, like just gonna do it and say it as long as it's not hurting anybody. And again, the intention's in the right place. I think that's all anybody's doing really, and I'm finding that out every single day. Everybody's making it up as they go along. So yeah.
And what do you think, like as a founder, as a successful founder, what do you think needs to be sacrificed in order to achieve a success?
I think there's short-term sprints of sacrifice. It's interesting. I think there's a lot about myself, and I do quite a lot of therapy. Fortunately, at this time in my life, and out of a place of curiosity and why I am the way I am. And I think I'm a very reactive person, that can be misconstrued to being proactive because I give myself a lot to do and I say yes to a lot of things and have to go like, oh, okay, like now I've got to make something happen. And I think I've always been a bit of a timing person and just like pulling it off. And I'm not quite sure why. Maybe I get a thrill out of it, or that sort of almost feels like a game or a movie. And I think life is quite fun when you think of it like that. And so I think when I say the short term sprints of sacrifice, like, whether that's my health or my mental health or my relationships or whatever, there's definitely ones that things that fell by the wayside in the pursuit of building the business and just, the priorities of that time of my life, knowing that there's only 24 hours in a day and, just very simple things that like rack up and you go, like, oh, damn, did I really forget to do it all now? Okay, can I bring that back into my life? Do I actually have time? What am I spending my time that makes no sense right now? And again, being quite like, I don't think anything has to stay as a long-term sacrifice. I don't think you have to sacrifice your weekends. I don't think you have to sacrifice your evenings or relationships. You know, a long time doing my whole all entrepreneurship, I've been in a very healthy, loving relationship that's been challenged at times by the pursuit of entrepreneurship, but it doesn't need to be sacrificed.
Well, speaking of relationships, actually, once you sort of became a founder and got really, really busy, like how would you say your relationships, different types of relationships, have changed?
I think definitely for the better. I'm not known as the best communicator to start with, and I think part of that is just like a frustration with texting culture and social media and as a means to keep up with each other. I'm much more one text, meet in person, maybe a phone call if it's necessary, and I think like the more and more you like make that the status quo, like people just adapt and know that you're not doing it from a place of like not caring or whatever. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It's just I can only really care for people when I'm there in the moment and able to listen and understand it. Otherwise, like what's the point? So yeah, relationships, there are loads of people that I don't get to see enough, and people that are moving countries and moving on with their own lives and careers. But I respect that. Like a lot of the people that I are still very core to my life are also equally ambitious people on their own journeys, and I think like it's not to say that there are people that aren't that I couldn't be friends with, but I think there has to be like an understanding of each other. And I think me doing what I'm doing and just pursuing it like almost selfishly at times, like has almost in a way worked itself out to be better for my relationships. Obviously I caveat that by saying like your direct family and your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever like should be treated with more more selflessness, shall we say. And so that's an ongoing learning curve.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because a lot of founders we speak to, they say like the romantic relationships really struggle as you progress as a successful founder. Like, how do you find time for your sort of like more personal relationships?
I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, like as much as I love work, and I think you can tell from this conversation that I'm deeply passionate about what I do, my absolute dream day involves no work at all. Like it's it's skiing, it's sailing, it's like seeing the beauties of the world, being on a hike, being out there, like that's being at a festival, listening to music, and so I'm just in, but that's not realistic on a day-to-day basis. So I think like for me it's almost like thank God I have something that rivals that in terms of that I enjoy and fascinates me in terms of work that can infiltrate that status quo of just wanting to just do stuff that doesn't result in any money and actually just costs you a lot of money.
Well, like given the kind of success that you're having and the experience that you're fortunate to have, like what would you say? Would you say that they're kind of like insecurities that are potentially amplified by success?
Oh, yeah, I think that like I mean insecurities are a weird one, I think, because I think as much as they might shape shift in how they surface, like they're probably still the same ones that you've always had in some way, shape, or form. Like like let's take vanity for an example. Like brace faced, poorly dressed, slightly tubby, like 13-year-old me had a different experience of vanity to me that's now building my brand online and is part of a world where everybody's very successful and like those, that wanting to appear and look good or it happens in a different way, and sometimes plays a larger role in your life, and so I think success just it just well, I don't know what is success, but success just changes that. Getting into different rooms with different types of people that care about different things. Bring out your insecurities in different ways.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like, because obviously recruitment is a very interesting space in the AI time, but do you think in, let's say, 20 years' time, can all of the jobs be replaced by AI? Because there's a lot of conversation online about it, how, like Dario Armadei from Anthropic, he's constantly saying, like in 6 months' time, we're going to replace 50% of all of the white collar jobs or stuff like that. How do you see that?
Well, again, my answer is I hope not. Like I don't like you know, what else can I say that I'm a fan of, the human beings. Like I think that, we're, you know, as humans, like obviously, it's incredible how awful some people can make the world, and but equally, like there's as much counterbalance on the people that do amazing things, and like, you know I don't see how tech at all could at all replace, like, you know so many qualities of human beings. Like we just, a lot of, you can study humans as much as you want, but we just don't make sense. And I think, like computers probably make too much sense to be entrusted with, you know the evolution and building of the world. I'm realizing I'm giving quite a lot of very meta answers, that maybe don't mean that much in practice, but like, I don't know. I just, I do think that, like, what does anybody actually want the world to be ruled by computers? Like, and if they do, then, arguably they are the enemy. Like, like they are the enemy of us. So we just need to learn to live with them. It's going to happen, but the pendulum always swings at some point. By hook or by crook. So I'm sure it will happen again.
I just love your approach. I think it's very refreshing to see someone who is so successful in also digital space, digital time, and you saying that you are a very big fan of human beings. That's just a beautiful line. Made me want to cry a little bit, especially in all of these times when everybody's like, replace people with AI. It's sort of like almost minimizing our existence to just, executing tasks, which, like you said, humans are so much more, and it's like chaos, and we're not predictable and things like that. So I love that you think about that.
I'm happy to go full Dario the CEO and have a little crying session.
So Peter, we're gonna start sort of wrapping up, but before we finish, I wanted to ask you, like, what are you the most excited about in the next 12 months?
Just seeing these training and development boot camps that we're building come to fruition. Honestly, like the brains and the people that I have supporting this, and the fascination, it's like, it's so intriguing, and I have no idea like what it's going to be in 12 months. But I mean, yeah, like education, like it's always been part of, life, and I think, like, to be able to contribute to the next wave of education, however big or small a way that might be, like, that's just like, it's so cool to think that that's what I get to spend the next 12 months doing. And making a documentary, like, having that sort of expression of self, the people I get to do that with, yeah. I suppose you could put more like metrics on it, and things that I'm looking forward to hopefully achieving. But I think that's like, that kind of stuff is more rooted in a feeling, that excitement, that pursuit of doing, and not trying to have too much, end goal syndrome.
Love that. So like being okay with not knowing what the outcome is going to be at the end.
Yeah, like putting yourself in the best position to be able to pull it off, and if it doesn't work, like understanding why that is. Was that the climate wasn't ready for it? Maybe like, maybe it's not the stage in my career that I could be doing it. Like, but I don't know. I genuinely feel like at this point in my life, like everything I'm learning can be applied elsewhere, and like I just have, a lot of faith in myself to be able to like navigate it, so that on a daily and weekly basis I'm adding something to somebody. So whether, again, how big or small that is might might change, and you can't control that much. But yeah.
Awesome. And if, people who are listening or watching our conversation, if they wanted to reach out, connect with you and see what you're doing next, like where can they do that?
LinkedIn, that's basically the only social media platform I use right now. My whole life is documented on there, more or less.
Do you have to say that as you're sitting in their offices?
No.
You had to check if they're watching you. Okay. Awesome, Peter. Well, listen, this has been a really great conversation.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Such a refreshing look at the market and the future. Absolutely loved it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I can't wait to see the documentary.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. And it's nice to be asked questions that like you guys actually want the answer to, and be able to like rabbit hole into my own brain in doing it. Otherwise, like I said, it's just a Q&A, which it very much wasn't. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks so much.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely.